All right. Today we are wrapping up our Just Saying the Power of Words series, where Kotz talked about how our words help shape who God created us to be, and they could bring healing and transformation and life. And our words can build someone up and join in what God is doing, and they can also hurt others, sometimes on purpose and sometimes not. And our words can get in God's way. Words can change a moment, it can shift a relationship, and even redirect a life positively, and negatively. And so now this isn't I'm not trying to give us an excuse for saying hurtful things, but I wanted to show Kot's slide from the first Sunday and how we're living in the now and the not yet, right? Our reality is we live in a broken world, and we are human, and we sin. We will, I don't know how to cure this, but we will yell at the driver who cut us off. We will lose patience with our children. And maybe we don't say something to our boss, but we may think it. We may intentionally use hurtful words because we want to hurt others, because they hurt us first. And many of us are even harder on ourselves, saying things internally that we would never say to anyone else. And then because we're Jesus followers and we heard this wonderful sermon series, when we say hurtful things, the guilt and the shame may creep in. We're not supposed to talk like that. We want our words to build up and reflect God's heart, but we mess up again and again. And if this sounds familiar, know that humanity has struggled with this since creation. That even the Apostle Paul writes about this in his letter to the Romans. And so I wanted to show Romans 7, verse 15, 18, and 19. Paul writes, and I'm sorry, I might mess this up and it might be hard to hear because it's so confusing. But Paul didn't write this. This was the philosophers, the pagan philosophers that wrote this. And Paul's just writing it. But okay, just be patient. I will try to do it slowly. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Okay, so Paul says there's a war inside of him, right? He wants to do good, but there's something else inside of him that's pulling him in the opposite direction. And he finally cries out in verse 24 and 25. He says, "What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me? Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord." And so what Paul writes in Romans 7 is he's naming the struggle that the Jews felt in trying to live out the Torah, the struggle that the Gentiles lived out and trying to live out their philosophies. They all wanted to do good, but couldn't do it consistently. And so Paul describes what we experience today. We are all in the same boat. And our problem goes deeper than our willpower. And only in God's love and his grace can Christ reach that deep part of us. Paul is naming our humanity, that we live in a broken world and that our brokenness touches all of us. And when our words build up, it's beautiful. When they bruise others, they bruise us too. But instead of judging ourselves as bad, like, oh, I messed up again, oh, I said that mean thing again, or I thought that again, we can recognize that this struggle is part of being human. It doesn't excuse the hurt, and I don't want to minimize the pain, but it's our reality. And these are the words that I want us to really hear today, that are hurtful words. They usually reveal a deeper hurt in us. Let me say, I know, right? Our hurtful words usually reveal deeper hurt in us. We see this so clearly in one of my favorite stories in Genesis, the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. So God calls Abraham to leave his homeland and promises to make him a great nation. Abraham and Sarah obey, but years pass and there's still no child. And the waiting for the child begins to wear on them. Earlier, Abraham and Sarah, Abraham had put Sarah in danger when he said, hey, Pharaoh's going to take you because you're so beautiful. So let's say that you're brother and sister, because if I'm your husband, he might kill me. So they say, okay, yeah, we're brother and sister. And Sarah, who has no real power, no real way to refuse Pharaoh, gets taken by Pharaoh. And this experience matters because unresolved fear and trauma, they don't disappear. They come back out later through our words or maybe even in our silence. So God appears to Abraham again, and he says, do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield. Instead of scolding Abraham for his lack of faith, God meets him in his anxiety and he comforts him. He says, don't be afraid. I am your shield. But Sarah is struggling too. In that culture, a woman's worth was tied to her ability to have children. Her pain is personal. Her identity and security feel threatened every day. So Sarah says to Abraham, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. And in that culture, that was totally what they did. And Abraham, he says nothing. He agrees. He could have said, oh, I have this, God reminded me of the promise. We can trust in him. But he says nothing. He's silent. And his lack of words hurts everyone. So Sarah uses the only power that she has, and she takes Hagar and gives her to Abraham in the same way she was presented to Pharaoh. Hagar has no real ability to refuse or consent, and hurt is moving downward. And Hagar becomes pregnant. And when that happens, when she finds out that she conceived a child, she begins to despise Sarah. And of course she does. When she's pretty much raped and finds out she has a child and she has no power, her voice doesn't matter. She feels squashed by power. Of course she's going to despise Sarah. Of course that hurt and anger is going to come out, and it's going to come out against Sarah. And so Sarah lashes out at Abraham with words of full blame and accusation. She tells Abraham, this is your fault. This is where we see so clearly how our hurt is revealed. The words that we say to one another, the hurtful words, is revealing the deep hurt within us. The hurt of not having a child, the hurt of not feeling good enough, the hurt of having power used above and over us, not having agency. I see this in my own life in the words that I say to myself. When my inner judge comes out, she is strong and she is very harsh. She demands perfection. She tells me I'm alone. She tells me that all of this, that I'm responsible for everything. And sometimes when it's really bad and I'm really tired, she'll say, you know what? They would be better without you. It would be better if you run away and if you're not there. You make problems for people. You cause stress. And to be honest, the things that my judge says to me echo the beliefs that I said to myself as a child, the things I learned as a child growing up in a chaotic home. And what I really needed then and what I still need is to be seen and valued and treasured for who I am, not what I do. So back in the story, Abraham avoids responsibility. Sarah mistreats Hagar. Hagar is like, I can't take this anymore. So she runs away into the desert, alone, pregnant, and powerless. And who meets her there? An angel of the Lord appears to her and says, Hagar, where have you come from? And where are you going? Just like in the garden when Adam and Eve sin and they're hiding, God comes into the garden, he comes to them and he's like, where are you? God knows her name. God knows her story. But he invites her into connection, not shame. And she answers him, I'm running away from my mistress Sarah. And he tells her a very hard thing. He tells her to return. Not because he's okay with her suffering, not because he affirms slavery, but because if she stayed in the desert, she and her unborn child would die. And then God does something astonishing. He gives this Egyptian outsider, slave woman, the one with no power, the same promise he gave Abraham. He says, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. God sees her, he hears her, and God is doing a redo. Like Abraham could have reminded her that he's my son and he's part of the blessing. But he didn't. And so God is he's telling her your son is going to be it's the same blessing that I gave Abraham. She is included. And then Hagar responds by doing something no one else in Scripture does. She names God. She says, you are the God who sees me. This is what the Egyptians did this is how they worship God. They're like, oh, this is a God, and I'm going to name that God. And it was not part of the Jewish culture. In my mind, I think God is like, no, you can't name me. I gave myself a name, and that was to Moses. But he doesn't say that. He sees her. He doesn't correct her. He doesn't silence her. He allows her words born out of pain to name him. And so she goes back. And spoiler alert, a few years later, 10, 13 years later, she runs away again. But that's part of the beauty of this. She runs away and God meets her again. We're human. We're living in the now and the not yet. But here's my point. We want our words to be like God's. But we live in a broken world and we are human. We are going to hurt one another. If we haven't, I'm sure we have already, but let me just say it. We are going to hurt one another, and in the process, we're going to hurt ourselves too. But rather than correcting and sharing, shaming one another or ourselves, let's take the hurtful words that we say as our cue that maybe our hurtful words are revealing a deeper hurt in us. That when we find ourselves doing what we don't want to do, saying words that hurt, turning inward or feeling stuck or feeling that God is disappointed at us, maybe, let's think, he's inviting us to go deeper. That beneath the words, beneath the reactions, to the places where we long to be seen, where we don't feel valued or good enough, where power has pressed us down, or where we've learned to protect ourselves, we can be grateful for this awareness. Awareness that we have this hurt, and then we can ask for help. We can seek guidance from others. Because God is inviting us to be vulnerable and intimate with him and with one another, and even knowing ourselves, rather than using our words as our weapons or our armor that protects us, because he sees us. And he longs to comfort and heal us, to come to us and heal us. And so that we can have transformation and experience life in him, the kind of life that he desired and hoped for us in the beginning. So as we become more aware of what's happening inside us, and as we receive his love and his grace, often through him and others, our words can begin to change. Not by willpower, not by saying, Lord, help me to say blessings all day, but it will change within us. inside us, and we will want to say words that build people up. And it might be a little bit easier and not such a willpower struggle. And in that process, as we bless and build one another up, we become the people in the community that God created us to be, and we experience heaven together. Again, not through trying harder, but through healing and transformation. We're still going to mess up. It's not going to be perfect. And the good news is that God continues to move toward us. He tells us we belong, even when we feel like we don't. He tells us we're enough, even when other voices tell us otherwise. And he tells us that our value always comes from him. Because when I think of Sarah and Hagar, or when I think of Sarah, she felt like her whole value came from bearing children. But as Kotz reminded me this week, like women were good before they started bearing children. He loves us as we are. So I'm going to invite the worship team to come forward. I have no idea what time it is. We might get out early today. But I'm going to invite the worship team to come forward. And I invite all of us to kind of just settle in our seats and get comfortable, however that looks for you. You might want to put both feet on the floor, unclench your jaw, loosen your shoulders, rest your hands on your heart or in your lap. And let's all take a deep breath. It always takes me 2 times because I can never really, I'm so stressed. So let's do it again. If you feel comfortable, let's take another deep breath. And exhale. And we're going to sing a song, but you don't have to feel like don't feel like you have to sing it. You can just simply be here. Daniel and the worship team are going to sing a new song, and it's called I Belong to Jesus. And for some of us, it may be a new song. But I invite you just to sit and let their voices be like God's words to us. Imagine him like just treasuring you and singing over you and just loving you. Reminding us all that we are seen and known and loved. And as we worship, we're invited to be as open as we are able to be and to allow God to meet us right where we are and to receive his presence as shepherd who cares for us, who protects us, as keeper, as provider and protector. Not just as we sing this song, as these words, but let it be like his words and his heart and his love, just singing over us. And may we be open to have it just touch deep